people worked too hard to become black Americans in this society, and we were slaves here. And we did a lot of free work.
Is it only less than 2% of white Americans own slaves?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery. And
I'm not.
And don't you want to get slavery behind you? You ain't never had a slave in your mother life. Get this past you. You pay them reparations, racism is dead. Get it past you, white friends.
The storm broke when Jillian Michaels appeared on CNN and with an almost casual shrug suggested that slavery was not as central to America's story as people make it out to be. She argued that less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves, so maybe the nation should get past it. For many watching, the words landed like a slap, especially for black Americans whose very identities in this country are inseparable from centuries of stolen labor, trauma, and survival. Social media lit up instantly, furious that such a dismissive remark could be made on national television in 2025, as if centuries of enslavement and oppression were simply a footnote. Enter Cat Williams. Known for his razor-sharp wit and unfiltered social critique, he didn't arrive this time with just jokes. He arrived with history, evidence, and a thunderous moral clarity. His rebuttal began by shattering Jillian's 2% myth. Slavery, Cat explained, was not an isolated practice of a few bad families. It was the backbone of America's economy. Cotton, sugar, and tobacco weren't just crops. They were the foundation of global trade, and enslaved black people were the unpaid engine driving it. Banks in New York, shipping empires in Boston, northern factories producing goods. Every corner of the American economy, whether in the South or the North, profited. Jillian's math was a smokescreen, Cat argued, meant to obscure the truth that slavery enriched not just slaveholders but the entire nation. He reminded viewers that every road paved, every port expanded, every institution funded during those centuries carried the fingerprints of enslaved labor. In his words, dismissing slavery as only 2% isn't ignorance, it's gaslighting. But Cat didn't stop at the numbers. He moved to the heart of why people like Jillian want slavery. Discussions buried. It's about controlling the narrative. He laid out that America's preferred version of history is one where white leaders benevolently ended slavery out of moral awakening, granting freedom as if it were a gift. The truth, Cat thundered, is the opposite. Freedom was seized by enslaved. Black people who resisted, fought, escaped, and organized at great personal risk. Harriet Tubman, guiding people north. Nat Turner's rebellion. The everyday acts of defiance like learning to read, keeping culture alive through music, faith, and family bonds. These were the engines of liberation. To erase that truth is to erase the agency and brilliance of the oppressed and rewrite history in favor of the oppressors. Jillian's rhetoric, Cat argued, wasn't just ignorant, it was a modern extension of that erasure. He drew a direct line to Trump's recent push to strip museums and school curricula of slavery-focused exhibits, claiming they make the country look bad. According to Cat, this wasn't about healing or patriotism, it was about narrative domination. If you silence the truth, he warned, you control the future. His point was piercing. America isn't uncomfortable with slavery because it's in the past. It's uncomfortable because slavery's legacy is alive, still shaping systems of wealth and power. Erasing the conversation is about denying accountability, not about moving forward. The debate hit an even rawer nerve when Jillian, a public figure raising a black daughter adopted from Haiti, defended Trump's erasure campaign and doubled down with remarks about black degeneracy. Cat exploded at the hypocrisy. He pointed out the cruelty of adopting a black child and then publicly diminishing the horrors of slavery and systemic racism that child will inevitably face. For him, Jillian wasn't just a misguided commentator. She was a living example of how denial becomes weaponized even inside homes. Social media agreed. Users flooded X and TikTok, asking how safe a black child could feel growing up with a parent who claims white supremacy isn't the problem. But black culture is. Kat took it further, explaining that this isn't just about one celebrity's tone-deaf comments. It's about a broader culture where people use proximity to blackness, adopting, befriending, working with black people, as shields to deny racism while perpetuating it. I can't be racist. I have a black child. Jillian's attitude. Implied? But, as Kat said, that's not protection, it's betrayal. The internet receipts poured in. Clips of Jillian on past shows, quotes where she minimized race issues, and contradictions between her public persona and her private life. Kat laced into that contradiction, making it clear that denying the reality of slavery while raising a black child is not just hypocrisy, it's dangerous. Because if the people shaping narratives in their homes dismiss systemic oppression, the cycle of silence and gaslighting continues into the next generation. From there, Kat zoomed out to the big picture: wealth, economics, and power. He painted a detailed picture of how slavery was not just a system of unpaid labor, but the greatest reverse transfer of wealth in modern history. For nearly 300 years, millions of black men, women, and children worked without compensation while white families accumulated generational fortunes. When emancipation finally came, white plantation owners kept their land, banks kept their investments, insurance companies kept the profits of insuring human beings, and corporations built on cotton and sugar expanded. Meanwhile, freed black people were left with nothing. No land, no resources, and laws actively working against them. Kat emphasized that this wasn't just history. The wealth generated still circulates today. The families of plantation owners still own land, elite universities still enjoy endowments seeded by slavery profits, and Wall Street was literally built on the financing of slave economies. He reminded audiences of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, a thriving community of banks, businesses, and culture that proved black people could build wealth independently. But in 1921, it was burned to the ground by white mobs with the help of local officials. Overnight, millions in black wealth was erased, and the trauma still lingers generations later. Kat's point was clear. It's not that black people failed to build. It's that every time they succeeded, systemic racism violently tore it down. Ignoring slavery means ignoring that American prosperity itself is rooted in black suffering. Finally, Kat delivered the knockout that turned the debate from personal to universal. He explained that calls to get over slavery are not about moving forward. They're about silencing power. When people like Jillian or Trump insist that slavery is exaggerated or irrelevant, what they're really saying is, forget the truth, forget your power, and let us control the story. Kat reminded everyone that enslaved Africans weren't just victims. They were leaders, innovators, and survivors who built communities, protected culture, and fought for liberation against impossible odds. That resilience is the real history that gets erased when people downplay slavery. He pointed out the hypocrisy of America giving museums, remembrance days, and Hollywood tributes to other groups who suffered while telling black people to move on. And he made it plain. Slavery built America. The roads, the universities, the corporations, the very foundation of the economy came from stolen black labor. Pretending otherwise is not just a lie, it's an attack. He ended with urgency, declaring that history is not just about the past. It's about who writes the future. If black people allow their story to be silenced, their power is silenced. But if they tell it, own it, and unite around it, no one can erase the truth. The real fear, Kat said, is not our pain being remembered. It's our power being recognized. And with that, he left audiences with a message bigger than Jillian, bigger than Trump, bigger than CNN. The fight over slavery's memory is really the fight for control of America's soul.